Welcome to the show. Hey, Bob, good morning. Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another, our fourth in our spin-off series of Three Blokes, Ball BOD, looking at Springbok and South African rugby roundup called Drie, Bokke, a Ball BOD, and tonight you are in for a real treat. Mostly because I won't be on most of the show. So hosting the show tonight to tell us more about what's happening, please welcome Scrum 5, Andy Daniel. Andrew, how are you? Oh, look, see, he's on mute. I didn't mute him. Andrew, how are you? You're off mute, mate. No. There we go. Yeah.
There we go. It says the host. It was definitely you. You're not going to shut me up that easily, mate.
It's because I'll tell you the reason why, mate. It's because that you were slurping. Show the bottle of the carton of. Show the carton that you were slurping.
Look, it's just look. It's yeah. Come on, move on.
Bit of glory.
Oh, available in Checkers, by the way. Available maybe in June.
We've even BOD has made an appearance for the first time ever because we are in the presence tonight of Sevens Rugby royalty. It's going out to 117 groups, forums, timelines, pages, LinkedIn, Twitter. It's going out on Instagram, it's going out everywhere tonight. So BOD, because it's Ringbox, he wanted the pair. Nice, look at that. Oh, not for close. He hasn't got a project, we haven't sent someone, but nice green and gold in honor. But he's going to sort of shoot off now. But here's our own, because we're talking about Sevens tonight and BlitzBOD. He's our own BlitzBOD or our own Spring BOD from now on. There we go. Good lad. Off you go. Go and get your. And Andy, tell us what's going on in the world, mate, and what's happening tonight.
Oh, mate, to be honest, I'm glad we've got this tonight because it's not been a best week, is it, ever? But look, we're looking at the potential of some Premiership rugby clubs going under if rumour is to be true, or prove to be true, should I say? Which isn't great news. There's some news in the Sevens world, which we'll touch on in a minute, which has been quite surprising for us all in the last week. So yeah, not really the best week, but. Up here in South Africa, Peter Steph du Toit is the big news this week. He was very close to leaving and going to France, again, you're to believe. And if you read other papers, say he was just playing the game, or his agent was, should I say. And he is now staying with the Stormers until the end of the British Lions tour, which means they kept hold of all of their 7 Springboks. And maybe if they can keep them fit for longer than 2 games, they might make a charge up the Super Rugby table if we're ever allowed to play rugby ever again.
Will be coming soon enough. It will be soon enough. Right, listen, we've got a few thank you so we can crack on the show because the important thing tonight is getting the lads on, and we do have some real Sevens rugby royalty tonight. So, first of all, a few thank yous. In the last sort of 2 weeks, we have had new logos done for Three Blokes, Ball BOD. The guy called Peter Vorberg did a favour from UK, did us a favour of that, looking brilliant. We have set up YouTube, so go to the Three Blokes, Ball BOD YouTube channel and subscribe to that. We're just adding stuff as we're going, so it will develop over time. We've started doing some stuff on Instagram. This has now gone, Andy's now convinced me that this has gone from we're still in the testing phase, I must actually point out, Mr. Daniel. You know, it was meant to be 1 show per month over a 3-month period to see how it would go. We're now gone down to 2 weekly shows, and it looks like it might even dip into at some point going to a week. I will be dipping out of tonight's show in just
I text him at least once a day. It's time to go weekly, Joe.
Yeah, but so does everybody for the spin-off. So we're working on a load of pile of other stuff as well. We have got our new Leinster Line, the new Leinster Rugby spin-off show starting on Thursday the 28th next week. We've got an Ulster one coming. We got a Wallabies one that we're planning for. We're looking at doing the Super Rugby Aotearoa in New Zealand, sort of rounds 1 to 5 and 6 to 10 for that as well, and lots of stuff. But anyway, that's where we are at the moment. So thank you for Peter Vorberg in the UK for doing our logos. We got some more thank yous, mate, which is only fair to do. Drie John from the fantastic South African, the SA Rugby fans, South African Rugby Fans Forum, who did the promo stuff for tonight's show. Just off his own bat, didn't he? Which is fair play to him.
Yeah, top man. Thank you, Andre.
Absolutely. And we got a shout out again to Reese and the team at South Africa Drie Army. I need to work on my Afrikaans accent, don't I? But thank you for the guys there. Reese Place, yeah, right. Yeah, he coughed his real name last week. But listen, thanks to both of those as well. And it is COVID-19, and during COVID, and much to the what's the word I'm looking for? Sadness of my own mentor team in the UK, who tell me that I'm not only making no money, it's costing me money. You can't buy happiness, but you can buy local, and that's almost the same thing. So there we go. Yeah, so that's it. We have reversed the tables, and instead of being sponsored with supporters and sustainers, looking after them during COVID. So Andy, who do we want to thank tonight? First of all,
the guys at Calpify, good friend of mine, Ruin. He's just started his own media business and doing things like the amazing titles that he's done for us, which you can see obviously on the YouTube channel, which you're going to mention in a minute. Ruin, cheers for those, mate. They look superb. They sound superb. They put us in another bracket.
Absolutely. Those opening intro titles video tonight we did was done by young Ruin Calp at Calpify Media, an emerging young talent, I think, and we are giving shout outs to those smaller and local businesses that are going. The other two are helping tonight. Excuse me, CoffeeDog.ie, who is my coffee supplier in Ireland, and not only have we turned the tables over now, so looking after Johnny and the team, because he's a rugby man himself as well. But if you go to CoffeeDog.ie and you use the promo code SHEP, SHEP, you'll get 20% off for the whole time during COVID. And he is now sort of sorting that around the world. Great thing about them is that A, I like the stuff, B, he's a small supplier, but he gets all the beans in and he roasts it himself in Ireland, and he's supporting a whole handful of small coffee growers across the globe. And I think that's really important that it all goes round and goes round. And finally, the main people that we are supporting tonight is our good friend Dan Funsale, former Springbok, former Leinster Women's and under 18s and 19s coach, who is now co-founder and director of rugby at the fantastic Rugby Academy Ireland, which is the only independent international academy taking youngsters and helping them to exponentially enhance their playing skills, their life skills, and trying to get them to the top level of rugby. And interestingly, Dan will be on the show in 2 weeks' time as co-host with Andy Daniel. So there we go. So we've asked Dan to do that as well. So go to rugbyacademyireland.ie and have a look around there. They recruit and they run courses and they take kids from all over the globe. It is the way an academy should be run, in my opinion. There we go. Right. I'm going to bugger off now, and Andy will introduce the guys, and I'll see you for wrap up at the end. Welcome to everybody. And look, we've got to see one of the things you can do about. Oh yeah, I love that. I've never seen the host chat used as much. Well done, lads. It's good. Maybe people as well. But there we go.
That's because we're talking too much.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, we've got also people. Gareth Adams is on the show. Jacques Henning is on the show. Ian Gilbert in Madrid is on the show. Hola, Ian. So listen, you've got questions for the lads, then please put them up there, or comments or thoughts or engagement. I'm going to drop out. Andy Daniel will bring in our three guests, and we'll see you later on. Andrew, cross to you, brother.
Cheers, Joe. Much appreciated. I'll try and keep this short and sweet, guys, because we want to hear the stories from these guys. First up, a man whose achievements off the field should be lauded as much as they are lauded on the field. It's all at the famous Rondebosch in Cape Town. Ex-UCT, Ike Tigers in there, captained them to their unbeaten year, very famous. Moved to the US in 2006, played for a number of clubs, including the Austin Huns. Played in 12 7 series events for the USA and travelled to the 2009 World Cup in Dubai. Now he is a man in the media, and he's one of the best commentators going on the Sevens circuit. I should probably say he's the best because he's on our show tonight. Former Sevens halfback. He's the director of sports partnerships. Shall I carry on? Let's do this. Sports partnerships for a friend of the British Council, promoting youth rugby all over the world, especially in the USA, doing amazing work, spreading the Sevens gospel. How are you, sir, Mr. Dallin Stanford?
Thanks so much for having us, man. It's an uncertain world, but we're finding positives to keep busy, and stuff like this really helps. So appreciate you having us on.
Brilliant. We got some people to keep you company. So the next guest is a man who played his whole career in the 15s game, sort of, at Wasps in a number 9 shirt, little stint at Harlequins that we don't talk about. He became the England Sevens captain. After that, became the assistant coach to the very famous and amazing Joe Lydon. Eventually took on the England head coach job. He then had a little break from the game. He went and took on the head coach role of Kenya, took them to their first ever final in one of the series events down in Wellington. And in the last 6 years, though, has really taken the USA Sevens scene by storm and has really pushed it forward. Last year, agonisingly finishing second in the series. His friends call him Geezer, but we all know him as Mr. Mike Friday. Seamless. There he is. Hi, Mike. How are you? Mike, can you hear us? Mike, can you hear us? And we'll move on. We'll leave Joe to sort that one out. Our final guest is a man who has scored and attended varsity in Bloemfontein here in SA, but played all around the country. He represented the Sharks, the Vodacom Bulls, the Cats, the Toyota Cheetahs, and in the Vodacom Super Rugby competition. He then moved to the Sevens scene and played in 32 tournaments in the World Sevens Series and gained a Commonwealth bronze medal in 2010. And at 2013, at just the age of 35, he was asked to become the head coach of the South African Rugby Sevens team. We can hear you, Mike. In 2017, he became the first man ever to win the series as both a player and as a coach when South Africa won the Paris leg of the Sevens. I have no idea what his nickname is, and maybe the gentleman tonight could help me. But let's be honest, we don't call his rugby team by their usual name of the South Africa Sevens because they are known as the BlitzBOD. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Neil Powell.
Hello,
How are you, Neil?
Hey, good, thank you.
Can't hear anybody? Can anyone hear me?
You make it sound as
We
if
can hear you, Mike.
I was like a gypsy when I played 15s because you named basically all the provinces in South Africa. So.
Brilliant. So I can't hear you or see you.
Thank you.
It's
you very much
amazing.
for that. Yeah, and it's thanks. It's been great, and thanks for the invite to be on the show tonight.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. I'm actually going to start with you, Neil, because the news this week of Gordon Tidgens leaving Samoa Rugby. How big a loss is that for Samoa? That's a legend of the game right there. That's walking away from a very up and coming. You know, they're becoming more consistent as a Sevens squad.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's a big shock for everybody. I think especially a year out from the Olympics. To all of a sudden change coaches the year before the Olympics is always going to be tough. So definitely not something that we expected. And like you said, I think a legend of the game. You don't just win 12 World Series tournaments and you don't know what's happening in a game. So for me personally, I've learned a lot from Gordon Tidgens. I even remember about a year or two ago, just before the quarterfinal in Hamilton when we played Samoa. We got each other in a coffee shop there just around the corner from the hotel, and he even bought me a coffee that morning. So definitely a legend of the game, and it's sorry to see him go, but hopefully we'll see him pop up in some other nation to still coach in the game of sevens.
Yeah, fantastic. And Dallin, is he one of these guys that's just got an aura around him when you see him?
Yeah, he's not the friendliest if you don't know him, right? And so he's all business, and so that's the tricky part. And he's been around since the beginning, right? So he's on every single stop. He's there. He's like an old pair of jeans. He just won't go away. But saying that, it is interesting, as Neil pointed out, that it is just before Olympic Games. I did expect him to retire at some point to give somebody else a chance to take over the reins, and maybe he acts as a consultant to especially some of the emerging nations. I think, a lot of countries need that expertise. You've seen what obviously Neil's done with South Africa and Mike has done with several countries. So that IP needs to stay in the game, of course.
Well, you missed my amazing introduction of you because you couldn't hear me. It was brilliant. You still owe me 50 quid for that. But the Titch, we're just talking about him resigning this week from the Samoa job. Massive loss for them a year before the Olympics, as Neil quite rightly pointed out.
Yeah, I'm surprised, if I'm honest. I think
you know, if we're going to be candid, it's probably an economic decision rather than anything else with everything that's going on. But just as a man, you know, like Dallin just said, Tits sometimes have this tough exterior that he kind of perceived and showed to everybody. But, you know, as Paoli's alluded to, he's a good man on the inside. He's always there trying to help, support. I remember me as a young England coach back in 2003 and 4. You know, I sat and talked with him on a number of things, and we exchanged ideas. And when I came back into the Sevens with Kenya and thereafter, he's always been a huge supporter and an advocate for all the coaches that are coming through, even though he wanted to win like we all do. And when he was with New Zealand, he won a lot. But I think Samoa was a really new experience for him, because all of a sudden he went from being the kingpin, one of the number one teams, to having to see it from a different perspective. And I'd like to say he mellowed a bit. But you know, he's always had a really good cheeky sense of humour as well, which people never saw. He loved a glass of red wine, and he loved a laugh. So he will be sadly missed on the world circuit. And as Dallin has said, I really do hope we do see him back on there in some shape or form soon enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely, legend of the game. Mike, just staying with you, can you give us a quick update of where you're at with US Rugby at the moment? It's all been very well documented. We had Gary Gold on a couple of weeks back. You're already laughing. All right, let me be honest. Have you still got a job?
They got me cheap. Let's just say that. I think the reality is, you know, and I'm sure Gary's talked about it, but you know, our financial issues are well documented, and we were in a period of, you know, from the start of the season, the 7th season, we were behind the scenes. We were doing some work on restructuring and trying to get our house in order and get ourselves in a position. I think the reality, as I've told this story many a time, the reality is as we came into the new year, we liken ourselves to a very unconditioned boxer getting in the boxing ring. And come February, March, we jumped in that boxing ring because we had to, and we weren't in the best of shape. And on the other stool was Mike Tyson in his prime, in the form of COVID, and he punched us in the face once, and that was it. So there is a lot of countries and a lot of nations that are under the cosh because of COVID-19, but unfortunately they're able to absorb a couple of punches before they go down, whereas we got hit once, and that was out. So we're in the middle of this process. We're halfway through it. We're in what we call a Chapter 11 or an extension of that, a Chapter 5, for all intents and purposes, in administration. We're working on a plan to get ourselves out of it. I'm hopeful we will. And hopefully we will be able to, in some shape or form, get the show back on the road in time for the start of the season.
We hope so. Dan, domestically, how has this affected? Obviously, you're not commentating week to week, which is hard for someone who freelances and things like that. But has this taken a knock to the development side? So obviously, Mike's doing the stuff at the top level, but there's so much work going on underneath that, which I know Mike's involved with. But is this a bit of a blow for that? Because it was starting to. I saw a picture the other day of I think it was one of your players, Mike, who took a picture of rugby balls in a sports shop, and he was like, "Thank you so much." Like, it's starting to just slowly but surely seep between the cracks. Is this a bit of a blow for that development that you're involved with?
Yeah, I would say so. Firstly, the biggest apologies is to my wife, because she has to hear me talking on podcasts or talking the whole time at home, where she used to just turn the TV off and it was fine because I was somewhere else. So outside of that, you talk about the game. So when I came through the US system, if I didn't play Club Sevens, I wouldn't have got selected for the US Eagles. That was the development pathway. And so you take out a summer of sevens and you have a bunch of new players that need to be seen and won't be seen right now. Who knows when this will go back. So that's a real unfortunate thing for the development of players, because unlike the 15-a-side game here where we have Major League Rugby, there is no true sevens pathway, if you will. And if your side doesn't make the national championships, the top 16 sides in the country, they play in an annual tournament, then your likelihood of getting seen is not that high, unless someone calls Coach Mike and says, "Hey, I've got a great player, have a look at this player." So you take that out, and all of a sudden those players do miss out. And then from a broadcasting point of view, of course, that's a big hit for everybody involved in the sport. And you got to think about it. It's not just us who are as part of the product. It's everybody else that misses out on that thing, and the unions are suffering for it. as we know, all over the world. It's not just USA Rugby that is having financial issues.
Yeah, that's a big country for Mike to try and get around to try and watch players. I can imagine. But guys, how are you using this time, Neil? This week's been some really cool news, and certainly something I try and champion as much as possible. You've been doing a lot of work with your own squad on preparing for life after rugby, which I think I said to you in the messages the other day. That should be in the daily rhetoric now for me, with young players, especially sort of in the area of flipping out the area of South Africa that we live in with schoolboy rugby, that not enough's being done. So what sort of motivated you to do that? Has it been something you've been doing anyway? And what sort of work have you been doing with the players?
Yeah, certainly. I think for us, the approach to develop these guys is more a holistic approach to not just develop them as rugby players, but also develop them as people and try to get them an education and try to help them financially so that they can look after their money, so that they are okay when they're done with rugby. And I think I went through it as a rugby player, and then that dreaded retirement date just came closer, and you were thinking, so what's next? Where are you going next? What do you do next? And lucky for me, I had the opportunity to study, because rugby wasn't that fully professional when I was at university. So you could still manage to go to classes, do all your lectures, and then off to rugby practice either early in the morning or late in the afternoon. So I think we were fortunate. And then somewhere in between, well, when I studied and where we are now, all of a sudden it's a full-time job where you go 8 to 5 and you there's no chance to attend classes or study, or you have to do it online. So what we've seen, and we really try to push really hard, even when we in full swung with the tournaments and in competition time, we still allow guys to miss training sessions to go to class. I mean, Impy Visser still wrote his final exam the Thursday before we play Dubai on a Saturday to get his degree in engineers. So it's I think that's high on our priority list. I mean, rugby is only part of your life, so you'll play rugby until you're 33, and then you basically have from 33 till 85 where you're still going to live, and you need to make a living for yourself. So we saw this lockdown time as the ideal opportunity to try and develop guys off the field more than on the field. We started with a little bit with online coaching, but we realized that what we work on now and tell the guys now, they're not going to remember if we only start in November again with 7. So we've tried to push more the educational side and the life skills side from our point of view. So we'll basically have 2 sessions a week where we actually approached one of our sponsors, First National Bank in South Africa, to actually roll out a 11-week module for financial literacy, just to let the young men understand what does it look like to be financially fit to buy a car or to buy a house. What's your payslip all about? What do you need to put aside for your retirement one day? Just small things like that I wish I knew when I was 22, 23 years old. So and then life skills as well, just to the basic stuff, how to draw up a CV, how to prepare for life after rugby. So just get people to speak to these guys that went through this exact stages of their life where they almost transition from playing into the life after rugby. And I think they don't realize it, but as soon as these people start talking to them, they realize that that's a lot tougher than I think what they got in their head. So I think it's a key opportunity for us to almost work on more on the off-field side for the players than on the on-field.
That Dallan's nodding away there knowingly, because you obviously made that decision as well, Dallan, at some point, that you wanted to go into the media aspect of it and you wanted to go into development of rugby. When was that? Were you advised to do it, or is it just something that you're one of the brighter ones of us, shall we say?
Well, no. Look, so let's be fair. As a youngster growing up playing rugby in any country, you want to play for your national team. That's your goal, right? And so my dad was always a proponent of education and making sure that was taken care of. Because he knew you could play sport for as long as you possibly could. So after I tackled Nick Mallett at a bar one night at UCT when I was studying at university, I didn't think my Springbok career was going to, come about. So after moving to the US, I'd studied marketing, I'd studied advertising, and it was always something that fascinated me was sports sponsorships, the other side of the game, but in a sporting environment. And so that I've always had with me, and looking for opportunities has always been something I've done in the sport. And so after retiring from Sevens, it was a natural progression to get involved in media. And so I went with the US team to World Cups in 2011 and 2013 as a media manager. And then they realized that I spoke so much. And so they're like, okay, well, you're probably better suited in the broadcasting side. You can talk about the game instead. So that's kind of where it's gone about. But even Mike, he's wearing Perry Baker's shirt. Players are focusing on other means to support themselves in good ventures. And Mike might not be the best looking model, but again, it's promotion that Perry, just joking, Mike. It's stuff like that will give the players something off again.
You're so street.
I'm just going to pick up on Dallin's point on here, because I agree wholeheartedly with what Pauli is doing here with South Africa, and we in America do the same thing. And Dallin's right. I'm wearing Perry's T-shirt because we run a career advancement rugby enhancement program very similar to what South Africa do. And Perry, we've assisted him how to get his business up and running through our philanthropists, the Golden Eagles, which support us fantastically well. But Perry has started to grow a business not only on the coaching side, but the online coaching, but also moving into the apparel. I've got Martin Yusefo's Wear Your Roots hat on. It's all of the boys. We encourage them that in order to be your best type of rugby player, you've got to be a holistic man, because a better man makes a better rugby player. It's not rocket science, but they've got to understand, and they need guidance, and they need support. They need to get opportunities to try different things, both outside of the game, but also within the game. So we've done, again, before all this COVID, we'd set up a regional coaching ecosystem where the players have all become coaches. So they've got their qualifications, but now they've got to go out into the local environment in Southern California and work with high schools, some with the women's team, some with men in colleges, not only to grow their network, which is kind of for life after rugby, but also learn how to get along with people and communicate with people of all ages. And they're things that we all take for granted because we're all old. But
who's old?
Well, just me. I should have got a picture on here, then I felt young. But I think now what Neil's talking about, and I'm agreeing, we have responsibilities to guide and nurture and support and develop these young men and young women that play the game holistically, because unlike when we played, we had other things that we learned alongside, whereas a lot of them now, they go straight from school into rugby, and they don't experience wider life skills. So for me, it's a huge part of the game. It's a huge responsibility, and we have to invest in the person as well as the player if we want to get the best out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like Sevens is as a brand and as a product is growing so fast and so well, and it's picking up. But Mike, I'm going to come back to you now on World Rugby, and I tend to have one of these moments every show where I sort of get on my soapbox a little bit, because what happens with the World Rugby election and everything, Bill Beaumont, I guess the MP show, put out their manifestos, and the argument for 2 weeks was Test rugby, global calendar. To me, looking from the outside in, round peg, square hole, loads of travelling, loads of expense, hoping that a stadium will be full, hoping that the rugby will be fast and everything like that. However, to me, sitting back and looking at it, Sevens looks to me like the perfect product to promote rugby around the world. Right, let's be honest about it. Less people needed to play a game. Less diverse shape, size, speed of people to play a game. I suppose my point is, if I walked into India tomorrow and went, there's a box with sevens, there's a box with 15s, the 15s is going to go into the bin very, very quickly. The sevens is definitely easier to roll out as a form of rugby. It's never going to take over Test rugby. There's a place for Test rugby. There's a place for everything. Why is World Rugby not pushing sevens rugby as the main driver to drive rugby into smaller nations Go before I lose my rag.
I mean, look, I think the world is become a very different place with what we're all going through. But I think there's a couple of things we need to probably understand and recognise is that Test match rugby and international rugby 15s is the blue ribbon part of the game, and I think people need to change the perception of the game of sevens. It's for those serious. What we would call
I'm talking about development tool. Though. It's a development tool.
I agree with you, but the problem is you can't sell something unless they want it. So the reality is we've got to change the perception of sevens. It's this product. It's this introduction to the game, as you want to call it, but it's also in its own right. It's the keys to the global market, and the Olympics is that key. So we, as the nations on the World Series, have a responsibility to put a proper show on come the Olympics in 2021. And World Rugby have a large part to play in that. And they've got to support and educate and insist that these traditional super rugby nations, Pauli, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, England, they don't see their sevens as the snotty kid in the corner. It's earned its right to stand alongside the 15s, not compete, to complement. And if we think about it like that, then all of a sudden we can create a product that the way I align it to is, if you remember how Formula One was failing, and then over a period of 5 to 8 years, they turned it to F1. That's what we can do with the sevens product, because it's such a similar product in terms of it moves around the world. All these teams, they put on a show and then they move somewhere else. And then they put on another show. And then the second piece we need to create here as well is because it's the only form of the sport where you can get real relative equality between men and women in terms of what you want to create. But more importantly, you can create clear pathways, which is what you're talking about. Transparency.
Yeah.
Countries can live the dream. You can dare to dream. It might be hard to get there, but you can create clear pathways so that India could fight their way to the top of the women's game. You've got China looking over the wall, looking at America going, we could fight our way to the top of the men's game. You've got South Africa going, I'm going to stay at the top of the sevens game. Nobody's getting there. But what you create is this competitive coliseum that everybody will buy into, and that will then bring broadcasting in, that will bring eyeballs in, and we know what that means. And I think that's the opportunity, but it requires some clean thinking and some blue sky thinking and visionary thinking, which World Rugby are capable of taking ownership of, along with, all of the people like me and Pauli that have been on the series, Dallin from a broadcasting, getting outside help to try and think, well, what do we want this to look like? How do we want it to sit to complement the 15s test match? If they want to do a global calendar on the 15s, great. Doesn't mean that they can't do something different that complements for sevens, but we've got to reposition it, not as the snotty kid, but as this vehicle, this product that sits alongside the 15s game. We can do it, but it's going to take a bit of work.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to explain to a lot of people now, since I've obviously moved to South Africa, that like in England, for instance, like, look, we love the sevens, we love going to Twickenham in May and probably not remembering much after the quarterfinals, let's be honest, but like we're not going to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to watch the semi-final over in Singapore or Hong Kong or whatever. In South Africa, Neil, they do. I know a lot of people who are like, the BlitzBOD are on, and this is the thing, South Africa have sort of almost created their own brand in the BlitzBOD, which I do believe complements the Springboks. Neil, has that happened organically, or is it just the appetite for the game here that the people have bought into it and almost created a brand themselves? I mean, let's be honest, you've got some characters in that squad over the last 5 or 6 years which have helped you, like BlitzBOD, Roscoe Speckman, hand in hand, happy days. But it's helped push the sevens game. We've got all the stuff going down in Stellenbosch with Frankie Horn and things like that. And there are pathways here that are very visible. Mike and Dallin talk about the pathways in the US. They're probably not as visible as they are here. They're very prevalent in the day-to-day talk. Is that something that you really pushed, or is it something that just happened organically?
Yeah, I think to add to Mike, I think it's definitely something that we seek that can complement the 15s, and I think that's what we tried to do when since we started out after Paul through is we basically went to the 15s unions, we went to Sarah and we said, listen, we know that sevens can be a development tool for 15s players, so we know we're not just gonna get a Quagga Smith and a Cheslin Colby and they're just gonna play sevens. We know we're developing them and we're growing them up or bringing them up for the 15s game, and they can be superstars in 15s as well. So, and that's exactly what we try to sell to South Africa. This is a vehicle that they can use, or a system that they can use to develop a 19-year-old or 18-year-old that they see as quality enough to play for the Boks in 15s in the future. And we know that he's going to be in and out of our system. He's just going to use the 7 system as a stepping stone to get to the 15s. And we tried to take hands with Rassie and Jacques Nienaber, that's now the head coach of the Springbok 15s, and work together in a way that they can attend our sessions, we're attending their sessions, we learn from each other, and it's always interesting when we sit around the table with Jacques, how that conversation can keep going for about 2 or 3 hours. I think he's almost as passionate about rugby as Mike. So he will keep you busy for quite a few hours when you start talking. And I think the great thing about the Springbok Sevens team is, again, it's representative of all the communities in South Africa. I mean, there's Sothos in that team, there's Xhosas in that team, there's Zulus, there's English-speaking guys, there's Afrikaans-speaking guys, and it's a fully representative team of what South Africans stand for, and I think that's why everybody supports the 17s, the sevens, the BlitzBOD like they do. They wake up 2 o'clock in the morning to support us, and we appreciate it. Yeah, it's amazing. And like you said as well, I mean, the characters that you have in that team obviously contribute to the fact that the people love it. Roscoe Speckman is one of them. Don't forget Chris Drie is definitely also a character of that team. Even Werner and Frankie, when he was on the circuit, he always used to be the guy that pulled pranks on everybody else in the team, and Werner almost took over that role when Frankie left. So it's an amazing system to be part of, and it's just amazing people, management and players.
And Dallin, obviously you've got a different perspective on sevens now, World Sevens. Obviously, you're sort of it seems like a brotherhood, these sevens guys. And obviously you're beating the sevens drum. Where do you see sevens moving, and do you agree with especially Mike there on how World Rugby should be using sevens, and using is completely, let's say, utilising the sevens vehicle to push rugby globally and get more world-class athletes out of the nations that we are not usually expecting them to come from?
Yeah, look, from my point of view, I think sevens is, as a lot of people would agree, it's a perfect game for any country to compete. And I feel like being in America for the last 17 years, a lot of people ask me the simple question. They say, when will your 15-a-side team compete with the top 10 sides in the world? and it's a question that, unfortunately, you have to, like, this is when I got asked this 17 years ago, I would be like, oh, give us 10 years. And now that keeps getting added. Now, Major League Rugby's here. It'll still be about 10 years. Look at what Japan did when they beat the Springboks at the World Cup a while back. So sevens, though, is that tool that can even it up. You talk about the Indias of the world and the other large playing nations, or large nations that can play rugby. I love that World Rugby has another level of competition below the Sevens World Series, right? So that's getting new nations exposure to sevens. They will get better over time. There will still be that large gap, right? To catch up with USA or South Africa or New Zealand will take a bit of time. But if you can play them regularly, like the teams that do get onto the World Series, then you can compete and beat them. I mean, Spain taking out England, taking out New Zealand in the last couple of years. That's proof that once on the high level of a series, you can compete, which is fantastic. So I'm all for, obviously, sevens, 100% in. You look at the Cape Town Sevens, 50,000 people per day coming to watch. That's a product. You're making money out of that. People are coming, they're loving it. They don't love when New Zealand beats South Africa in the final play of the game by 2 points. I've never seen a crowd go so quiet. Outside of that, it's the game for the future.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. They say they want quick, fast rugby. They've already got it. They just need to utilise it better. Joe, is there any questions out there that's burning that you want to chuck in before we go on to the final topic, where hopefully they're all going to stitch each other up? Quentin, would love to hear a little bit insight of the BlitzBOD culture today and how Neil's playing days played a role in his method of coaching today. Brilliant question.
Yeah, obviously that culture for us is massive. I think it's well known in South Africa that culture is important, and more often than not, players that come into our system that don't contribute to the culture almost get work out of the culture by the players themselves. It's not even the management that have to almost tell that guy, sorry, this system is not for you. So, and it's very much a servant culture where everybody contributes to the system. In terms of just daily duties that they do in the everyday life of a Springbok Sevens player. So yeah, and I think in terms of my playing days, I think obviously being coached by quite a few coaches in terms of Rassie Erasmus, I played with and under him when he coached and as a player as well. Played under Jake White, SA under 21s. Played under Heineke Meyer with the Bulls when they were so successful. Played under Chester Williams when he was a sevens coach, and then obviously under Paul True as well. And I think all of them very, very good coaches in South Africa. And I think as a player, you can look at all the things that you felt just work nicely for you and that sit well for you, that you felt was positive. But it was also obviously some negative stuff from all those different coaches where you feel like, okay, that's not something that I would like to have in my system when I'm the head coach of a team. So it wasn't just the positive stuff. Sometimes there was one or two things that you didn't like as well that you said, okay, let's put it aside and let's just take all the positive stuff from all the coaches that you learn and then implement it in your way of coaching and your way of building a structure and stuff like from Heineke. That was the first professional system that I was part of. They had somebody that actually stood by the scrum while they were passing, and the guy that stood there by the hookers when they were doing the line-out throwing. Chester Williams, I learned honesty in those one-on-ones when you need to tell a player, listen, you're in a team or you're not in a team, and this is the reason why. I think a lot of coaches try to soften the blow a little bit with a little lie in there just to not make that blow that hard. But I think Chester said it like it was. If it was for this reason, then he told you, listen, you're not in a team because of that. And I think I respected him a lot for that honesty that he had, especially in those one-on-one situations where he could have actually tried to put a little lie in there just to soften the blow. So a lot of things that you learn from all those coaches that you've been coached that you actually took into your coaching style and your system.
Fantastic. Right, moving on to our next topic. I'm going to start with Dylan on this because Neil and Mike, you are poachers turned gamekeepers, so you're not allowed to. Let's start from the player's perspective. Dylan, let's talk about life on the road. Let's give people an insight in what it's like to be on the circuit, because it all looks glam, and I'm sure there's been some nights out after the Las Vegas Sevens. If there isn't, I'm very disappointed. And I'm very lucky. I've been to the Cape Town Sevens, which is absolutely amazing, and Twickenham. How hard is it? Because it's going to take a lot out of you as a player. But is there a glamorous side to it? There must be some good parties. Come on, you're allowed to tell us.
Well, I mean, I'll get on the parties in a second, but just to the life on the series, you obviously people tune in and see the big stage, right? They see the tip, I suppose, of the iceberg, right? And that is glamorous and really amazing to be able to represent your country in any sport at any stage. But as we said, Sevens is such a global game, and you get to play against people from all over the world. What I really love about the series is that you stay at the same hotel with every single other team, and that is very unique. I remember 15 aside, you may have a dinner with the team, but you don't really see them outside of that, right? And it's all battle on the field. Well, Sevens is such a community, particularly because you're going to go week in, week out against the same people. You're going to see them next week. You're going to see them at the next tournament. You become friends. You really become friends with players. I've got a podcast now that I'm busy launching soon, but I'm chatting with all the players I played against because they're so friendly and so nice and approachable. So that's the great thing about it. The downside is competing in different time zones with massive amounts of travel between your training and your tournaments. What people don't understand is that, you're battering each other for your position in the team. Now, things have changed since I played. Al Covelli, our head coach for the Eagles, used to fly us in the week before to San Diego. There'll be 24 people, and he says, all right, the 12 that are left standing are going to make the side. So you go hammer and tongs for a week. You're barely able to get on that flight, and then you have to turn up and play, the Blitzbox or these unbelievable teams you're gassed. Mike has obviously changed the setup and done things slightly differently, but those are the real tough aspects. aspects of it. Yeah. Last thing. So because you need to be in the prime shape of your life, you really can't partake in anything crazy, food wise or drinking wise, obviously. But at the end of a long tour, so you've trained with your side, you've played in one leg and the second leg, you are allowed to go out for a few social cool drinks. Some coaches don't mind it. Some coaches do. I think it's an important part of the game, the camaraderie and and you going out with your players you played against. That's always fun. There are no crazy stories. I'm not going to reveal anything about Kurt Baker. He doesn't love wearing clothes when he goes out for a few drinks, but outside of that, it's good fun.
Political handbook 1.1, Dan and Stanford. Cheers, mate. Thanks for that. Too much time in the media. Mike, come on, give us some honest answers here. But in fact, let's compare playing days to coaching days.
Wow.
Like I said, probably poacher and gamekeeper.
I used to play. I played on the early days of the series when it was fun, like proper fun. Even my early days is when I was in the England coach. So here's a great story. So when we were England coach, we had the Commonwealth Games. And I had some lively characters. I had probably the nearest thing to Dennis Rodman in Henry Paul. Henry Paul is
Sauce
by name, amazing player. But when we won Hong Kong for the fourth time, literally, I was a young England coach, and I gave Amor my credit card, and I said, right, you lads, go and enjoy yourselves. They literally went out and ended themselves. And the worst thing was they couldn't remember the credit card code number. And I told Simon it's my date of birth, our birthday date, and we've got the same birthday, and he still couldn't remember the code. So Simon Amor, who now coaches England attack, Cambridge graduate. Oh my God! I mean, this is how good a night they had. So back then, it was very much you could at the end of the 2 weeks do this. Nowadays, you can't, because the level of competition and the recovery time, especially those 6-7 legs that we have from January through to June, you've got to look after yourself. And Darren's hit the nail on the head. Now, the guys are far more sensible. It's a different generation, and they look at things differently. But what I do want to emphasise is that the camaraderie, the support, the fact that when we're around the hotel, 16 teams, they're all friends, and they get along. Paoli and I will share a coffee. Which you might have breakfast with one another, one table away, and you're how's it going? That is there across the board. Obviously, come match day, battle lines are drawn, and we all hate one another. But then by the end of the day, we all love one another again, and that's the same with the broadcasters. There's a lot of banter that goes on. It is a travelling circus. It is a big family. It's a unique experience to be part of. So for a young player, whether you're Cheslin Colbin, who's part of his journey to become a 15s international, the ability to learn how to tour and interact with people from different cultures and different backgrounds is paramount to being a good person. And, there are some great stories. That was one of them. There are plenty more we could go into, but even I would have to probably step away. But yeah, it's a wonderful thing to be part
of. Brilliant. I've actually got a serious question for Neil. Sorry, Neil, I'm giving you all the serious questions tonight, but
that's good.
Just from a rugby, I'm going to go into my rugby geek mode now. From a rugby geek sort of side of things, analysis-wise, obviously it's huge in the 15s game, but in sevens, how much analysis can you do? Like, you're playing against Mike's boys, Perry Baker's going to do what he does. Barrett's going to run straight over the top of at least 6 of your players in one move. Or do you just focus on what you do as a team? And basically go, do you know what, we're going to be the best at doing that, and everyone else can look at us. And I'm not saying because you're the Blitz box, Mike, you can obviously chip in on this as well.
I'm listening to his answer.
But how deep can analysis go on a game that moves so fast, and week to week to week to week is you're in each other's pockets?
Yeah, I think you'll be surprised with the amount of analysis that goes into a sevens game. I think in between games and a tournament day, you can see all the coaches and assistant coaches sitting on their laptops and looking at the opposition and looking at themselves to see how they firstly can better themselves and the mistakes they made in the previous game, but also if there's any cues or clues in how to play the opposition. And I think and it's in-depth analysis. I mean, they look at kickoff formats, they look at whatever it is, any triggers that you can pick up, even in between games as well, because it might happen that Mike, after one tournament, went home for that 2.5 weeks and maybe work on something different in terms of his line-out plays or his scrum plays, and you need to obviously pick up on that in that tournament and try to stop it. So there's definitely in-depth analysis going on in the tournament, and you will see basically for the whole tournament, that's 6 games. Between those games, you will see all the coaches on the laptops looking at the games and putting plans together how to beat. Even though you probably know 90% of what the opposition is doing, you still look for that 10% that might be unknown to you, that you haven't seen before, to make sure that you prepare your boys for the next game.
Yeah, I'd agree with Pauli. I mean, like, especially this year, especially us against South Africa, we've had some humdingers that have come down to moments.
Yeah.
And we are all desperately looking to see if we can get that edge between games. I mean, it's quite worrying the amount of men you see on laptops. You'd be thinking they're looking at someone else, but they're not. we're literally taking games apart. But and you're digging for a little gem and a diamond that sometimes isn't even there. But you can't assume it's not there, and that's the challenge for the players and the coaches, to remain fresh and open to the fact that there could be something new you're looking for, which is tough. Kind of games 4 and 5, week 2.
Yeah, tough life. Joe, there's a few questions there when you bring it up. One of them is Mr. Anton Chaitz, I think, after this one. If you could find Anton's about Mr. Sanatla. I think there's a lot of people asking this question. I'm going to put Neil on the spot now. You don't have to. Well, no, you do have to commit. Let's be honest about it. It's Ivalo Sanatla's future in the 7s or 15s. You've got to answer honestly and not as his head coach.
Well, I think.
Don't say both. You're not allowed to say both either.
Definitely 15s. Definitely 15s.
It's his decision. I could say anything.
You hope it's 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a special player, and if you look at his record in 7s, what he did in the time that he's been with the 7s, he was really great in the 7s game. And I think, and again, it almost come back to the culture in South Africa. I think all of us grew up in South Africa, 15s rugby and 15s World Cup. I think we didn't grow up with the Olympic culture like America or Great Britain. So it's really difficult to keep guys in 7s with the Olympic carrot, because we didn't grow up with that culture. Where with the 15s, it's obviously a big thing for them to play for the Boks and then to play in a World Cup. So I promise you, if you stop supporters and fans at a stadium in South Africa and you ask them what's bigger, Olympics or 15s World Cup, 90% of them will probably say 15s World Cup and probably 10% Olympics. And I think we unfortunately just didn't grow up with that culture. And again, I think we see again the 7s as a pathway to develop 15s players. I think Sanatla is capable of being a 15s player. I think one thing that I felt he should have done is he should have stayed 2 years longer in the 15s, in the 7th setup before he went to 15s. And the reason for it is just to mature his body a little bit more in terms of the physical contact that he's going to take in 15. So when he told me that he's going to leave and play 15s, my opinion, and I think I did mention it to him, I said to him, listen, my opinion is stay 2 years longer in 7s, where you do full-time 7s in the Super Rugby season, and then go play Currie Cup still. But just to mature your body a little bit, to take those bumps and bruises week in and week out that you will get when you play 15. So but I think he is capable of being a 15 star as well. But he was definitely a superstar when he played 7s.
Yeah,
absolutely. Mike, you're probably a bit sort of slightly on the other foot on this one, because do you and Gary potentially talk about moving people between the 7s or 15s, or is 7 so key? I've heard you talk about, I've heard you in other interviews before talk about funding and Olympics and America, and they all walk hand in hand. So is the 7s team medaling at the Olympics more important to you or the general public than a highly successful 15 team? I don't mean you personally. I'm just talking about the rugby landscape.
Yeah, I think the rugby landscape, the sporting landscape in the USA means that if we want to open the world of rugby to America, is the Olympic dream is the way through it, and that's the way forward, because then we can capture the imagination of high schools and colleges. And if we can capture the high schools, we hit that golden age of 11 to 18, where we need rugby to sit alongside the traditional super sports of America, which are ridiculous, to complement, not compete. Because we know in the college system, our best athletes will go to basketball, football, and baseball. But if they're like the 99% that don't make it and they've got rugby EQing them from 11 to 18, they'll come back to the game afterwards because of all the values of the game. So rugby sevens is the keys to the marketing suite, shall we say, to allow us the opportunity, maybe 10 years' time, as Dallin would say, to compete on the 15 side. And I think that's we're a very unique sporting landscape in America. We are unlike the rest of the world because of these three super sports. So I think, it's a big challenge for the USA, and it's one that we embrace, because we are the other way round, in the fact that I say to Gary, there are certain players that can do it. Martin Youssefo did it. Ben Pinkelman did it. Danny Barrett did it. Yeah. In the end, came back. People like, and again, they hate me saying this, Perry and Carlin would never actually translate across, because one, they're crossover athletes, so they've had to start late in the game, and two, physically and their attributes that they're allowed to excel in the sevens game, there's not that space on the 15s game, which kind of goes back to Neil's point about Ciabello, is that he was the best finisher on the sevens circuit when he left. He was unbelievable. He sniffed a try out of everywhere, but you're not going to get that space on a 15s pitch. And if you're not physically in a condition to look after yourself, and Ciabello's not a big lad like Carlin isn't, or Perry, it's very, very hard. Colby's a bit of a one-off, but he has other attributes to his game. Shane Williams was that other example, who was like a little pocket kind of bouncy ball that used to rebound everywhere.
Yeah.
So, no two players are the same, and they've got to have guidance, and like Neil's talked about, guidance and trust in those people to try and achieve whatever their long-term aims will be, whether it's an Olympian or whether it's to play for the South African 15s team. You can have it all. I mean, that's the other thing. Someone like Sanatla, Colby, they've had it all. They can have it all. I mean, which is great, which is what the game's about.
Yeah. And Dan, final question before I'm going to ask you all the same question at the end that's been asked more in different ways on the side of the screen here a few times tonight. Dan, is there anyone that we should be looking out for in the next couple of years in any team that's sort of kicking around that you think is going to come through and be the next Sanatla or the next Perry Baker Connors that you've seen either in the US or anywhere else in the world?
A good question. There are a lot of players that are more dangerous than climate change, but the tricky part is, do they get the opportunity to go into the seven setup and then display their skills? Because half of the game is mental as well. Seen a lot of players commentating at some of the lower levels that have brilliant skills, and you're like, wow, this is going to be the next star. But then they don't transfer that skill later. And so I know from experience, some of it's mental, and some of it is they maybe peaked younger and maybe don't come through. So I can't really give you any names right now, but I mean, Neil and Mike are in perfect position. They scout players that are youngsters coming through. And what I love about it is that sevens also gives players that are 18 years old a chance, where 15s, it's rare to crack in at that young age. And I know in South Africa, there was a stigma about choosing younger players back in the day. And when somebody like Bren Russell came out of nowhere, sevens pocket rocket, then they were like, oh, maybe we should look at sevens a bit more. So you need players like that. We've seen Colby and what they can do,
I've got one American, so maybe Powley might have a South African, but there's a young guy called Toi Angelo, who is 18 years old. He was in the high school, World High School Americans for us. He's in camp with us. Powley knows, and Dallin knows how much of a freak Makarunefi is as an athlete. This guy is 18 years old. He's a smaller version, but he has potential to be decent, really decent. I'm excited, but it's about the right time to play him. He's 18 years old, so is he going to be patient? That's the other thing that we have with young players nowadays, is are they prepared to be patient?
Yeah. Get him a good agent.
Well, no agents. No agents.
That's why I did that. I don't think they exist, do they? I don't think they exist. Guys, there's been a few questions. We're going to go quick fire, and I don't care if we overrun because I'm enjoying this way too much. Dallin, Mike, Neil, in that order. Favorite place on the series?
Hong Kong, favorite place. Number one, I went there as a fan and got stretched out after a drinking injury, and then I got a chance to play there and hopefully get to commentate there when things open up. It's unbelievable, epic.
Mike?
Yeah, I think for me, obviously South Africa. Sorry, did I chip in there, Mike? Sorry about that. I apologize.
You're in the chair, Sally. You're in the chair, son.
Go for it.
Yeah, so obviously for me, Cape Town. For obvious reasons, home tournament, amazing stadium, amazing
unreal
tournament. So definitely the favorite. And a close second is actually Vancouver. I like the city. I like the tournament. That's I don't know. For some reason, I just love the place and love the tournament as well. So it's also a good stuff for me. The worst one is Hong Kong, and I think it's probably because that's the only tournament we haven't won yet. So maybe when we get a bit of success there, then maybe my mind will change.
4 in a row, wasn't it, Mike?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
We know Mike.
Phil Green and still have to.
We know your credit card. We know your credit card number now, Mike. So that's good.
So for me, as in terms of as an event, in terms of for the players and the experience, it's and the way that they're looked after, it's Cape Town. But the one that's kind of close to my heart is Dubai, and the reason I love Dubai is I get to watch the international, but I can go out and I can watch the vets with a couple of blokes that I'm like, you need to give up. I can go and watch the under-18s. I can move around, and it's a true festival of rugby. And I have one real memory when I played for England there back in the old days on the sand, where I was getting ready for a game, and then there's a big old vet in the corner with a beer, shirt off, belly out, having a fag, and he looks at me and he goes, "Who are you playing?" And I'm like, "Mate, I'm trying to get ready for a game." And and he's just coming, and that's the essence of rugby. There's the fact that it is for all ages, all sizes, male, females, young men, old men, schoolboys, and Dubai does encapsulate all of that. And that's why I love going back there. It's in the middle of nowhere, but that's half the fun as well.
Brilliant. Gents, I could stay here for hours, and Joe's giving me a load of stick on the side of the screen. So as he's the boss, I'm going to. I wanted to keep me going on this. So, gents, firstly, thank you. What an amazing insight into the sevens world. Incredible. Thanks for being so open and honest. Apart from Dallin about his stories, but I'll get them out of him next time you're in the Cape, mate. We'll meet up for a beer with Jeremy. But no, gents, thank you so much. If I could just ask if you can just stay online, even though you're going to disappear off the screen, just so we can say thanks personally afterwards, and you can tell us how bad we were. But guys, thanks so much. Guys, Dallin Stanford, Neil Powell, Mike Friday, thank you. And of course, anytime you let us know, you come straight back onto this show. Anytime, more than welcome.
Cheers, thanks, Andy.
Thanks,
Cheers.
guys.
Well, there we go. What can you say, lads? I tell you what, I genuinely have to say some nice things because I still sat there. No, this was the first time ever in 2.5 years, 300 different shows I've been doing. And tonight it was fab because I was watching it all on the phone. I've learned that Andy Daniels doesn't understand what host chat is, even though we told him. It was quite good. I even sent him a message on Messenger. I sent him a message on WhatsApp. I
saw it, Joe. I saw it. But I was sorry about it. I was having too much fun. I didn't want to go home. Don't shut the nightclub. I just want to stay out.
I wish my spine wasn't knackered, and I want to go and play. Mike, can I come and carry your bag for you or do something, mate? Honestly,
yeah, no, I definitely need to weasel my way onto some sevens. I don't know. They won't have me. I'll just be a burden, but I'd love to.
I'll tell you what game was good. Yeah, they can still hit. Well, exactly. There you go. You heard it first. I'm in first. It was Kitman. Gents, it was a real pleasure because it gave me an opportunity not only to sort of play around on the production side and give Andy his run at doing this, but actually I learned so much. from you all, because sevens is something I enjoy watching. And it does overlap onto the 15s a little bit for me, that this whole change of North and South Hemisphere on when we play the Global League at the time of year, because nobody enjoys things better than going to a sevens competition. And if we can, and it's great hearing the culture where everybody's mixing in together, and actually that's positively encouraged and all of that, and it's just fab. And I've gone away, like we always try to do here, having seen people engage, having learned from experts like yourselves who have been there and done it and are still doing it. And it's actually given me a whole load of more points and things for more shows than I can think of now. So that's the way to stop, because I won't be able to sleep tonight, and I've got no Malbec to turn me off. Seriously, guys, a real eye opener into the game of sevens for somebody who was a club player, and I can only thank the three of you, and I would like to formally invite you back on again now to do a part 2. And as we're all connected, we won't let you go. And it's like the Liam Neeson of rugby. So it's been really, really good. We got to wrap things up. But to everybody who's contributed tonight to engage and put the questions and things up, I've been able to go through and answer some things and have some little side chats with people as well. That's been fab. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, next Monday, we are back. Yes, thank you to everybody, because this show just isn't obviously about South African Springboks. We've got an international audience watching it, which we've brought out from the other shows. So there's no show on Monday and there was no show on Wednesday. So this is the only one this week. So people have been sort of saying to me, when are we back on? So next Monday, we've got the Keego and Big Joe show. We've got Bo Robinson, the former Australian player, business coach, who is on with me and Keego, and that is I think that one is 8:30 or 9:30, but it'll be confirmed up through the page. Next Wednesday, we have got the greatest ever, and we've got 3 guys who are looking at the greatest ever series, and we're looking at forwards. So who are each of them have got to pick 2 greatest forwards. And then on next Thursday, we've got the Leinster Line, which is the first of the new Leinster Island spin-off shows, and loads more going. Go to YouTube and subscribe if you want to see a bit crack. We hope you've enjoyed yourself all through the night watching tonight. A huge thank you to Scrumfire's Andy Daniels, who, and that's the way it's going to work. So I have those under the work. He is going to become the host, and we'll both some other people on with him, so I don't have to do it. So to Andy and to everybody who's engaged here tonight, thanks very, very, very much, and we will see you for next Monday's Keego and Big Joe show. Everything, as always, goes through 3 Blokes of Ball and BOD on the main page. All the updates there. If you want to see a show, if you want to come on a show as a fan, if you want us to do a topic, then let Andy, Keego, myself, or Nige quickly for also know, and we will get that all done for you. And until the next time, Don Stanford and Neil Powell and McFriday, thanks very, very much for your time, lads. I'll be there with you in 2 minutes. Andy, take care of yourself, mate. Great job tonight.
Brilliant. Cheers, Joe. Take care.
Until next time, guys. Good to meet you, my huggers. Agus, Sangafal.